However, many of John Carpenter's true masterpieces are in other areas. In particular, he also has a very strong love for science fiction, his interest in which can be traced back to his very first feature film. Originating as a college short, Carpenter was able to obtain a budget to make a feature film, so he did, and thus the cult classic Dark Star was born. This movie gives us a rare glimpse into John Carpenter's comedic talent. The premise is about as basic as you can get. 4 guys stuck on a slowly decaying spaceship in the middle of deep space. Hilarity ensues. This also contains some of what may be among the most memorable scenes in any of John Carpenter's work, such as the scene where one of the astronauts is in a race against time to teach an artificially intelligent bomb the fundamentals of rationalism.
Intuition is no proof. What concrete evidence do you have that you exist?
Well, I think, therefore I am.
That's good. That's very good. But how do you know that anything else exists?
A classic subplot in the film deals with one of the astronauts pursuing a strange alien that looks like a beach ball. The guy in question is actually Dan O'Bannon, who co-wrote the film, and this little segment would become the basis for a later screenplay of his, which would be directed by Ridley Scott, and 5 years later, the movie Alien was released. It has also been said that the whole premise of Dark Star was a major inspiration behind the BBC sitcom Red Dwarf. Escape from New York proves that low budget does not mean low quality, as John Carpenter demonstrated by creating an exciting sci-fi action thriller.
Bob Ramey at FOMC Pictures asked me to make a movie of a book called The Philadelphia Experiment. And I said, well, I have this script in my trunk I've had since 1973 or 4 called Escape from New York. So I let him read that. He said, sure, let's do it.
At that time, I was saying I'd like to do a futuristic action, sort of semi-action movie that's got a great character in it.
What most people remember about this film is its protagonist, the memorable one-eyed anti-hero Snake Plissken.
Snake is a great character because I believe in him. I think that he's one of those what-if characters. What if you could be like Snake Plissken? You'd love to kick ass. You'd love to just not have to care other than for yourself.
I think probably I made everybody corrupt in this world. And Snake Plissken is really the only man with honor because he doesn't care about anybody.
Ultimately, he's my favorite character.
In fact, this was actually the movie that launched Kurt Russell's career as an action hero. The studios were shocked when Carpenter chose him over Charles Bronson due to the types of roles he had played before this.
Hey, this may be a way of getting rid of Dean Higgins.
I'm not a cowboy, Pam. I'm a stuntman. But that's a very easy mistake to make.
Of course, this film couldn't have worked without also having a great supporting cast, which included Ernest Borgnine, Donald Pleasance, Harry Dean Stanton, Adrienne Barbeau, Isaac Hayes, and of course the legendary Western actor Lee Van Cleef.
Associate producer on the film, Peggy Broughton, had been a casting director, and she said, you know who hasn't been seen in a long time is Lee Van Cleef. And how cool was he back in the old days, and how cool was he in spaghetti westerns. And so I met with him, and he was cool. I mean, he is Lee.
Starman proved that Carpenter was capable of playing against type, casting aside his usual gritty, violent dystopia in favor of a beautiful and heartwarming sci-fi romantic dramatic road trip comedy, helped by excellent performances by Jeff the Dude Bridges and Karen Allen, probably best known for her role as Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Starman is kind of the big deal. It's the best actor nomination that happens, Alien and everything. What are your memories of that?
Working with Karen Allen, wonderful experience with her, and playing that part. You know, a lot of these awards and stuff really depend so much on the role. You know, the role that you get to play.
The story is pretty simple, but John Carpenter makes it work through an excellent blend of straightforward fish-out-of-the-water comedy.
What'd you line?
Line?
Work. What do you do when you're not hitching rides?
Oh, I make maps.
Make any money?
I make maps.
An incredibly touching drama.
There is something I must tell you. I gave you a baby tonight.
It's impossible. I can't have a child. I've been to a doctor, a couple of them.
Believe what I tell you.
They Live works as a deliberately over-the-top sci-fi action film which makes the wise move of never taking itself too seriously. It's also got one of the most famous and often quoted lines in a Carpenter film.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
It's also got what may be one of the most ridiculous and extremely long fight scenes in the history of cinema. Although the fight scene is about 5 minutes, it feels more like 20 or 30 minutes, mainly due to the fact that two characters are beating the crap out of each other just because one of them refuses to wear a pair of sunglasses. But in the end, he did. Vampires is a compelling and gritty supernatural action film, sort of a more adult version of The Lost Boys. Comparisons to the popular TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer are inevitable, and indeed there are a few similarities, mainly in the idea of a specific individual being secretly trained by a shady organization to hunt down and kill vampires for the good of mankind. Nonetheless, here, instead of Sarah Michelle Gellar as a valley girl with a slightly more aggressive side, we get James Woods as a grizzled anti-hero, and where Buffy Summers relied on the use of stakes, magic, and old books to kill vampires, Jack Crow's team works with stakes, guns, and high-tech gadgets. Also, John Carpenter casts aside traditional elements and creates his own type of vampires, which are extremely badass because they are different, but they don't sparkle.
Have you ever seen a vampire? No. Well, first of all, they're not romantic, alright? Forget whatever you've seen in the movies. They don't turn into bats. Crosses don't work. Garlic? You wanna try garlic? You stand there with garlic around your neck. One of these fuckers will bend you fucking over and take a walk up your strata chocolata while he's sucking the blood out of your neck, alright?
John Carpenter's career has sadly faded within recent years. After reaching the height of his career in the 80s, the 90s saw him produce a series of poorly received films. He even grew bored with filmmaking and considered retirement until vampires convinced him otherwise. While he did make some good movies, they were greatly overlooked by his other films, considered by many to be among Carpenter's worst. Among them is the big-budget return of Snake Plissken in Escape from L.A., which many believe, despite Kurt Russell's performance, fails to capture the charm of the original, and Ghosts of Mars, which has a small fan base but is still widely hated. Then again, most of his earlier films met the same reactions upon release, so perhaps one day some of these movies will gain a cult following and find their own audiences, much like Dark Star and The Thing did before them. After the failure of Ghosts of Mars, John Carpenter disappeared from the filmmaking scene. He briefly re-emerged in 2005 and 2006 when he directed 2 episodes of the TV series Masters of Horror, but it was not until 2010 when he returned to the big screen with The Ward. So far, there have been no announcements in regards to future projects John Carpenter plans to become involved with. But even if he never releases anything else, much like Hitchcock, Kubrick, and Leone, Carpenter has left behind a distinguished body of work. Films which are and will most likely continue to be loved and enjoyed long after he dies. Even if very few of his movies were successful upon release, Carpenter's influence is unmistakable, ranging from the unintentional shaping of an entire genre with Halloween to groundbreaking practical effects in The Thing. His resume is long and diverse enough that there is literally something for everyone. If you are interested in seeing what he has to offer, the best place to start really depends on your own personal tastes. If you're looking for good horror, then you should definitely take a look at The Thing. In the Mouth of Madness is also quite an interesting story in itself, and Christine, while not necessarily as creepy, is a disturbingly interesting study of how one man's obsession with his car ends up destroying him. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person who likes a good, well-paced action movie, especially one with a great actor playing a likable badass anti-hero, then you'll be sure to enjoy Escape from New York and Vampires. If you're more of a romantic comedy type of person, and you want a less intense but still well-written story with great characters, then you'll quickly fall in love with Starman. And if you just want a good laugh from a creative comedy with very dark and subtle but clever humor, then Dark Star is probably a good movie for you.
Didn't know what time it was and the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some get it on rock and roll, he said. Then the loud sound, it seemed to fade. It came back like a slow voice on a wave of phase. That was no DJ, that was hazy cosmic jive.